Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Randy Bordeaux, and we're going to be talking about how to get started in Azure today. So let's jump right in. We're going to go over to the Azure Portal, which we have right here. And what we're going to do is how you get something set up, right? So the first thing you have to do is you have to have a resource group. So you can have as many resource groups as you want. You can put them in specific regions, but anything you build has to go into one, and it's just a way to logically organize your resources. After that, like say we want to put a VM, we want to have a Windows server up. So you have to have a resource group, and then you have to have network connectivity. So you'll have to have a virtual network, right? So you'll come over to the virtual network blade, and then you'll be able to add one. And then you can add the server. However, Microsoft makes this a little bit easier for you. You can come straight to here, the front page, and you can just click create a resource. It'll take you to the marketplace where you can select a predetermined image, and then it'll walk you through all these steps. However, we're going to do this by jumping to the virtual machine blade. So we're going to click on virtual machines if you have it on the favorites, or if you don't, you can just type in virtual machine up here. And then you click on virtual machines. Doing it through this blade gives you some options you don't have in other places. So we're going to come here and just click add virtual machine. Now once you get here, this kind of pops up the GUI wizard that they want you to walk through. And you can see, like, you can pick a resource group, but you have create new down here. So we're going to create a new one, and we're going to name it RG for resource group. And then we're going to call this servers. This is where we're going to put our servers. And let's say it's production, and it's our first one, right? Then we're going to pick the region. And I like doing this before we pick names or anything else. So let's go to West US 2 is what we want. And the reason for this is West US 2 is a little bit cheaper. There's more availability there, so you get the servers at a cheaper rate. So now we can pick our virtual machine name. So I'm going to do VM Win 2019 prod 01. Right. This will be easy for me to identify. This is a Windows 2019 VM. It's production, and it's the first one. You can name these whatever you want. Typically, if I'm doing this in an actual production, this would be the function of what it is, right? So VM-DC, right? Or SQL or file server, whatever you have. A lot of that just depends on your internal naming conventions. Then our availability options come in if you want to have it in a set or a zone. The difference is a zone is going to replicate between zones or regions. Set is where you can create multiple VMs, and then you can tell it when you go to this address, I want one of these, right? So we're not going to do infrastructure redundancy right now. We're going to jump in here and we're going to say Windows 2019 Data Center. And Azure Spot Instance is what you use if you're doing a test machine, right? So you can click this and it'll tell you how you want it to shut down. So capacity is where Azure decides that they need that space for somebody who's going to pay more than you. So they'll take it away. But doing this gives you a lower cost for your machine. Price is where you can set what you want your price to be, right? So your maximum price you want to pay per hour, right? So make sure you catch that per hour part, because if you put in, I don't want to pay more than $300, thinking it's the month, you'll have a big problem. And then you can tell it what you want it to do. You want it to just stop it, deallocate, or do you want it to delete the VM, right? So we're just going to do capacity right now. And we're going to tell it to stop deallocate because that'll stop the billing, right? And then we're going to come in here and we want a B series because we're just doing this for testing. And looks like we don't have an option for a B series. Okay, so in that case, we will just do this D series, right? And then you have to put in a username, whatever you normally use for, and this is your administrator that's going to be on the machine. And then you'll have to put in a password, and it'll tell you if your password doesn't work. Right? So we got that in. Public inbound ports. This is if you want to be able to RDP to the machine. Right? You'll need that. And if you have an existing Windows license, this will save you a bunch of money. Right? But if you don't, then you can get a hybrid, or you can get the Azure licensing. They'll take care of all of it for you. Our next piece, and you can either click up here or you can click next and go into disks. So I always throw this to standard HD just because we're doing this for a test. This will depend on your workload and what you're doing. Networking. Now, here's where it comes in. You need a virtual network. If you don't have one, you'll see it says new, and it's going to create one for you. So I want to name it. So I name them with VNet for virtual network, but I like it at the beginning. And then this is where you can set your address ranges and subnets, right? So we're going to take a 16 instead of a 24 because I want to be able to have some more subnets. All right. And you can tell if you get something wrong with it, it's not going to let you do it. Or if you put it in the wrong field. So we're going to have a server subnet. So all our servers will fall in that range. All right. Now, to do this, it's going to create the virtual network, going to create the subnet for you within that virtual network. Then it's going to create you a public IP. And I always click this so I can change this. So I have an idea what it is. Now you can do standard or you can do static, just depends on what you want to do. Standard is where you get into load balancers and things like that. For what we need, we're just doing the basic dynamic. And then if you do a network security group, which you will have to do if you want to allow public inbound, so you can have those rules. If you don't have one, then you're going to want to create one. Now, for me, I always select no because I want my network security group to be on my virtual network and not on the computer. All right? And then we're going to jump over to management. Now, this is very important. This is where you can get your logs so you can troubleshoot, but this requires a storage account. Right? So always make sure we do this. We want to create a storage account. So let's do this. So we're going to say this is a storage account for prod diag logs. These have to be unique. So this is a little bit harder. You can't have any uppercase. You can't have any special characters. It has to be all lowercase letters. But it also has to be unique throughout everybody on Azure. So this may require you to put in like a company acronym or something so you can get it unique. Now I just want locally redundant. So we're going to say okay. Now this is going to set up diagnostic logging for me. Right? Boot diagnostics and then the operating system diagnostics. I want to be able to log in with my Active Directory credentials. Now, if you're doing tests, this is a great feature, right? Auto shutdown. So if you're doing this and you say, okay, well, I leave the office at 5, and I'm not going to be messing with it after 5 p.m., you can just tell it to shut down this server because you're not going to be using it. Now, obviously, that's not great for production. And then if you want to enable Azure Backup, you can just check a box, and you'll have to tell it or create your services vault and your backup policies. And then patch installation, I always just do OS orchestrated. And unless you're running an actual managed patch solution, that's your best option. Now, advanced, this is where you can come in. You can either create your own or you can select extensions to install. So like in here, if you have Rapid7, right, something like that, then you could do it. So Network Watcher is always a great one to help you monitor. So you just select it, hit OK and hit OK, and then it's going to deploy that for you. If you want to deploy another one, you can come in here, like custom scripts, Azure Performance Diagnostics, anti-malware. There's a bunch of them. And you can also just create your own, like using PowerShell desired state configuration. You can completely configure the server through these. Right? So we're going to jump back out. All right, so this is where you can throw in, a script, files, data, whatever you need. Dedicated hosts, we're not going to get into, right? Because you have to create host groups if you want to specify exactly where your server is going to be. Or if you have proximity, right? If you need it to be closer to one thing or another. And then you get into your VM generation, right? So Gen 2 gives it the EUFI-based boot architecture. I typically look on Gen 1 because that's everything that we need. And Gen 2 does not support disk encryption through Azure. So that's a very important security feature. Then we come to tags. Now, I always like to do this where we have a set of required tags, like company, environment, function, right? You can put anything you want in here. And then your owner. Now, this will tag all the resources it's going to create. Then you come over here and you hit review and create. And it's going to validate and tell you what's wrong, right? So here we failed our validation. So let's see why. All right, Network Watcher extension is disallowed. All right. Now you'll see this. I have a policy in place that requires tags. So when I went to validate, it said, well, you don't have the Network Watcher extension on your tag. And this policy requires it, so I'm not going to let you do it. So let's go back to advanced. And if we come in here, it won't let us select that. So we're going to delete that out and we'll do it after the words, which is very easy to do. Now our validation passes, right? And that policy says you have to have environment, function, and owner tags on every resource. And if you don't get to do anything. Now here's another very important piece. Down at the bottom, you'll have a download template. Always download these templates. Right? You can just download it, give you the zip file. You can upload it later, or you can save it. If you save it, right? So we can do Windows 2019 server test deploy. Right? You have to fill these two out, and then you hit save. This will save it into your template. So if I decide I need to come back later and I want to deploy it, I can deploy it. I can even edit this to say I want these things or these parameters, change anything you want about it. And this would allow me to say I need to go deploy 900 of these for some reason. Then I could use this and just tell it, run this 900 times. And then it would do it. So we're going to come back and we hit create. It'll go through this processing, tell you it's initializing, submitting. You'll get this screen. And once the deployment's done, then you'll get a deployment is complete. And you'll be able to jump straight to your resource. So this is how you get started, how to get a VM on Azure, everything you need. I hope it's been informative, and if you have any questions, please just let me know. And if you haven't, like or subscribe to our channel. We're on YouTube, or you can visit us at randybordeaux.com. Thank you, and come back.